Hey guys, it is Wingy here and welcome to another episode of my top threes, which is a series that, if you didn't know already, I talk about one of the Doctor's eras and talk about either their top three best or their top three worst stories. We are going to be looking at the top three worst of the third Doctor, Jon Pertwee's era. This era for me is probably the second best in the classic era, generally speaking. I think a lot of my favourite stories are within this era. Jon Pertwee is nailed on top three favourite Doctors for me as well. So to pick out some of his worst stories, surprisingly, wasn't difficult at all. Because when you have an era that is generally so good, it's easy to pick out the ones that are quite crap. I will admit, to start this video off as well, one of these choices I feel is going to be quite controversial. It's going to be a pick that a lot of people might think, really? Okay. But I'm sticking to my guns on this one. So, let's begin. First off, let's just get it out of the way with Time Monster. It frustrates me every single time. I watched it not long ago, and weirdly Becky quite liked it, which I found bizarre when we watched it together. Each to their own, I guess. But for me, no, I just can't deal with this story. It's too bogged down with crap. There's so many things in this story that are just laughable. But the frustrating thing is, this starts off as a really interesting story. The only problem that I have is that it doesn't really stick with that story. This is not something exclusive to the Time Monster. Various different episodes have done this in both the classic and the new era, but it's something that typically I don't like. Other times I can let it slide, like Stones of Blood, for example. I don't mind that. But this, when it starts off and it's like, the Master is trying to build this time machine device. Time machine device? Well, a time machine. I'm going to leave that in. Fuck it. And he's trying to build this stuff and he's got scientists working for him and he's playing around with time. And that's quite interesting because it's like, oh, is the Master rebuilding his TARDIS? Is this, you know, him trying to become a free man again? He's trying to get out there into the world, or universe rather. The answer is no. No, he's not. He's trying to contact a giant bird creature called Kronos and go to Atlantis. Why? Fucked if I know. I've said before, I'm not going to hold special effects against classic Doctor Who, but in this instance, I'm lying because it's fucking shit. Kronos looks ridiculous. You've also got this sequence where the Doctor puts together this contraption made up of like a spoon and a fork and a wine bottle and a corkscrew, and it's just daft. That entire scene is stupid. The fact that it's 6 parts as well, and it just keeps going on and on and on, and a lot of the guest cast aren't compelling or interesting characters whatsoever. The two scientists, they can both fuck off. The guy doesn't do anything and she's clearly got a stick up her ass. Like, they're both way too annoying to be in a story. Not even just like this, just in general, they just shouldn't be written the way that they are. I mean, taking Doctor Who to Atlantis is an idea that was inevitable. It was going to happen at some point, but it just didn't work. The Time Monster, for me, without doubt, is one of Pertwee's worst, and easily it's one of the classic era's worst as well. Now, this next story I did think about, and upon rewatching it not long ago again, I did kind of enjoy it. But at the same time, the more I've thought about it since, the more and more I don't really like it, and that's the Mutants. Now, I think this, or a story like Colony in Space, they could fit more or less in this same position. This isn't like a top 3 worst in order, by the way, so this isn't like the second worst to me. What I am saying, though, is that, you know, a story like this, or Colony in Space, either one could be on the list. So if someone is just like, oh, I actually quite like the Mutants, that's fine. You can. Everything that I'm saying, you can probably aim it at Colony in Space as well. The problem that I have with the Mutants is, again, whilst I'm watching it, it's good. It's enjoyable for what it is, but it is slow. The more and more I think about it after the fact, the less and less I actually want to go back and watch it again. If I enjoy a Doctor Who story, that's not going to be the case. Every single one of the stories that I love, whether it's the Sea Devils, whether it's the Time Warrior, whether it's the 3 Doctors, these Pertwee stories, Spearhead from Space and Terror of the Autons as well. These are the types of stories that I want to watch them again and again. I want to see them again and again because I want to relive the story, but I also want to see if there was anything that I missed previous times of watching. I just throw myself into stories that I love. I mean, Genesis of the Daleks I must have seen countless times. The Hand of Fear is my favourite story. I know, don't worry about it. But I've seen that thousands of times. Earthshock, thousands of times. Caves, loads of times. You know, all these stories I've watched multiple times because I love them. And I love the feeling that I get when I watch them. I have a real nostalgia towards them. But with something like the Mutants, I don't give a shit. You know, a story like this where it's just alright. They're a bit lackluster to me. And there's a few of them in Pertwee's era as well where They are good stories, but they might be a bit too long. This one, like I say, it does suffer from that. This is a story that realistically should have been 4 parts and not 6. But I understand with the time constraints, they had to probably stretch it out to a 6-parter for whatever reason. I'm not going to hold that against them because that was just the way that they made TV back in the day. But a story like this, you can trim a lot of the fat and you end up with a much better product. The general idea behind the mutants though, and the actual design of the mutants as well, I actually enjoy. You look at the mutants themselves and you look at the people that are in this story, and it's not until the very end that you put it together that, oh, they're actually changing into these things themselves. It's part of their genetics. That's just what they do. It's not a disease, it's not an illness, it's just their DNA. It's their survival instinct kicking in. That's a really clever idea. But there's a lot of back and forth in this story. There's a lot of similar scenes happening continuously of the Doctor having a go at this person for this and them shouting back at him, and then a few episodes later the same general conversation happens again, and then other people will have similar conversations. It just feels slightly repetitive, it feels slightly dull, and it feels bloated. It's not a bad story, and to say it's one of the worst is a bit unfair to a certain extent, but generally speaking, Pertwee's got some great stories, so the fact that this is here would suggest that his era is pretty good, if that makes sense. But last but no means least, the controversial pick. Now, here's the thing. Doctor Who can be a number of different things, right? And I will always say Doctor Who can be bad. Easily, it can be bad. But even when Doctor Who is bad, it can be enjoyable. There are really naff and awful stories that I imagine you guys watching, as well as myself, get something out of, because they're either funny in the wrong sort of way, or they're at least a talking point. One thing that I will never ever excuse Doctor Who for is being boring. Because you have something known as the TARDIS, you have a sandbox which is infinite. The TARDIS can go anywhere, anywhen. The only thing that is holding the TARDIS from going anywhere and all these different unique places is the writer's imagination. You can literally do anything in Doctor Who, literally anything. So when it's boring, that annoys me and it frustrates me, because Doctor Who should never be that. To me, it seems unfathomable that Doctor Who can be boring, because it's about someone who travels in time and space in a phone box and fights these weird aliens made out of tinfoil and bubble wrap. And you know, it should be enjoyable even when it's bad. So a story like the Curse of Paladin really fucks me off, especially because the Ice Warriors are in this one as well. Again, this sort of has the hallmarks of a Doctor Who story that should work. You have got the Ice Warriors in it, who are a very good villain. They are one of my favourites, and they're some of the standout ones from the 60s. Not only that, but you've also got this inner conflict at this civilization going on, and you've got a giant fucking green dick wandering around. How do you fuck this up? I know that the Curse of Paladin, generally speaking, is a popular story. It's one that people seem to talk about. It's one that people seem to like. And yes, you could argue that Monster of Paladin is the worst story, but generally speaking, the Monster of Paladin is known as the worst story. This is known as a good one, and for the life of me, I don't fucking know why. What makes it worse is I can't sit here and say, well, you know, it is 6 parts, they dragged out a bit far and all that sort of crap. I can't. It's 4. It's a standard story size for the classic era, and yet it feels so drab and dull, and I don't know how anyone finds enjoyment out of this story apart from seeing the Ice Warriors. I mean, I do like the twist as well that the Ice Warriors aren't the bad guys, which is quite cool. It's a nice little twist. And I also like the scene where the Doctor hypnotises the beast and does that Haroon, Haroon, Haroon song. That's quite good. Everything else can fuck off. I mean, this story has quite a few things in it already that I just don't like. For one, I hate the trope in the Pertwee era that whenever they go somewhere, I mean, it's not in every single story, but typically they'll go somewhere and there'll be some male character that they meet who just falls in love with Jo after meeting her for, you know, 5 minutes, and is like, Jo, you must stay with me. You must stay behind. You've met her 5 fucking minutes, mate. I mean, it happens in this story. He's a king and he's like, Jo, you must stay with me and be my queen. Why? Why must she? Fuck it, do you have no women on your planet? Like, just because one has shown up and has been friendly to you, that doesn't mean she's going to stay behind and sacrifice her life of being on Earth to be with you. But not only that, it looks drab. The sets are grey and dull and boring, and it's just a plate. Like the background behind me right now, I am well aware, right? I am well aware that these are just cream walls that have no sort of interesting thing about them whatsoever. I know that usually when I do videos, or I know I haven't for a while, but usually I have like a cardboard cutout of Tom and I've got a desk with a load of stuff on it, and that's somewhat engaging. I understand that these are crap, right? I get that these walls are not the most engaging background, but the thing is, I'm just some dickhead on YouTube who's making a video. I'm not a television programme made by the BBC. I don't care about the politics going on in this story either, you know? I know it's a metaphor for the UK joining the European Union back in the day. I get that, but I'm talking about the in-universe politics. I don't care about this planet. I don't care about the people. I don't care about their story and their background and their conflicts and, you know, this beast that lives below the surface and who's a mythical creature, really. I don't care about any of that. Alpha Centauri is fucking annoying as well. The Ice Warriors being in this should be really cool, and the fact that there's a twist and oh, they're actually not the bad guys, that's interesting. But is it really? Because it doesn't go anywhere. They're just sort of there in the background and just there for the Doctor to go, well, it probably is them because I've met them before and they were bastards before. That's all they're there for. They're just a plot device. The weird frog fetus thing that's in a jar that's really the villain. Like, who gives a shit? Yes, Monster of Paladin is probably worse, but this one just bores the fuck out of me. And at least I know by the time I get to Monster that, well, the first one was bad, this one can't be much better. And I'm right. Genuinely, this is one of the Doctor Who stories that I properly struggle to finish. I really do. This is one that I just don't enjoy from start to finish. Whilst objectively speaking, it probably isn't the worst Doctor Who story in the classic era, and probably objectively speaking again, isn't the worst of the Pertwee era, it's got to be on here for me. It really does. It just winds me up to no end, as you can plainly see. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with my list? Do you not? What would you say are the worst stories of the Jon Pertwee era? Whatever your thoughts might be, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it. Subscribe for more. Social media and Patreon links will be in the description as always. So if you would follow me on any of those things, I'd absolutely love you forever. But until next time, guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye. Yes, thank you.